Hey everybody, Kevin here from HumboldtCraftworks. Welcome back to another episode of Woodworking with Mr. Kevin. That's me, and today what we're going to do is I'm going to show you two different ways to shape very small molding the safest way possible. So small molding can be dangerous, especially if you don't have a router table, but even if you do, it can be dangerous because it's very small and it's flexible and it's hard to get a hold of, and you got to get your fingers real close, or you got to use a feather board. That doesn't always work. Or if you have a power feeder, sometimes you can't get the wheels to hold the little tiny ass molding where you want it to. So I'm going to show you two different ways, one way with your router table and the other way using a handheld router to shape little tiny molding like this right here. This is actually a piece of molding that a client brought me the other day. She said I need 48 feet of this and 48 feet of that to put in a closet. So I said, okay. This, I don't know if you can see that or not, is very, very small. Very dangerous to shape because it's so thin. This is like 5/16 by 7/8, and it has this rabbited part on the back here, which makes it even thinner. So what the hell are we going to do? Well, I'm going to walk you through the entire process and how I go about shaping little tiny things like this the safest way possible. Because you don't want to get your fingers too close, and you don't want to wind up looking like that, because that would just be silly. All right, so let's get to the video, and thanks for watching, and here we go. All right, so the first thing we need is a pair of calipers. So the first thing I did is take the width, and I measured that, and that was 7/8 of an inch. And then I measured how thick this thing was right here, and that was 5/16. And it's got this weird little bead on here. And if you see all this molding here, this is what it was in the last video when I was explaining board footage and all that stuff. This has the same cutter as this. And this is going out on an install tomorrow. I'm going to load it in the truck as soon as I get done with this video. Anyway, back to this. We have floor molding and some kind of weird molding that sits on the bottom. So we measured this, and it was 7/8 by 5/16. And then we have to put this like rabbet in the back right there. And that brings us down to, hold on, I got to put my spectacles on.
A few moments later.
Yeah, that's 3/16. So this thickness here is 3/16. So very spindly, very small. So if you were to take this, and it's got dirt all over it too, it's been out in the mud. So if you were to actually take this and mill this and then try to shape that edge, you'd have a hell of a time because it's very, very flexible and not easy to shape when it's this small. So here's what we're going to do. We'll take the 7/8 of an inch and we're going to basically add an 1/8 for the blade. And that gives us an inch, and then we're just going to double that because what the hell. So 2 inches, so we're going to make it 2 inches, and this is 5/16. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mill a piece that is 7/16, so a little bit fatter, so we can actually shape these pieces and then be a little stiffer, and then we're going to plane it down to what we want. Then I'm actually going to dado the back out. Why am I going to do that? Because when it's 2 inches thick, we can dado this right up. I mean, look how thin that is. You see that? This right here is 3/16 of an inch. What we're going to do is we're going to lay it flat after we've shaped both sides. We're going to just basically dado this out all the way. Burp, burp. It's going to run through the table saw, dado it, and then we're just going to rip it to 5/8 of an inch is what this thickness is here, and we're done. Because when you got to make little tiny moldings like this that are super thin, super skinny, you can't just make them that way and then shape them and hope everything works out. It's better to, like I said before, make them wide, make them thicker, plane them to the thickness that you want, and then dado the back out and then rip them down the middle. And this could be for anything, but I'm just telling you what I do in my thought process and how I go about doing it. So if you want to watch, continue watching. And if not, there you go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go load this in my truck because I've got an install tomorrow. So thanks everybody who subscribed recently. I really appreciate it. I'm going to write up a list and put it up at the very end of this. Thank everybody that's in my phone right now that the phone keeps saying, oh, you got a new subscriber. I'll put your name up at the end of this video, and you can see your name up in lights. I appreciate it, and let's get to the video. All right, here we go. Okay, everybody, one more little tip here. I have to make this piece of floor molding, and they want 48 feet of this. It's 2 7/8 tall, and it's 5/8 thick, and it has a bevel on it like this here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to go about figuring that out. It's got a flat on it right here, and I just drew a line right where the flat is. So I put a line there. I measured from here to here, and that was 2 1/8. I set the blade to 2 1/8 from the top dead center to the top here, and there's a video on it somewhere over there that you can watch if you don't know anything about top dead center in your table saw blades. There's two ways you can go about finding out this bevel. One is to set the piece in there, put it up against the fence, measure this thickness right here, which is 1/4 of an inch, and set your fence to that 1/4 of an inch. And then you can slide this into here, and you can take the bevel on your table saw and just flip it over until you get close to the angle you want, which might be right or it might not be. But I have a better way, and that's because I have this thing right here. It's a Wixie, angle finder, and there's a video over there on the Wixie angle finder also as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn it on like I just did, and we're going to flip it on its side, and we're going to hit 0. It goes to 0, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of wood out, we're going to flip it up and put it next to the fence here so it's up against the fence, and we're just going to push that up against there, and that gives you the angle right there, which is 9.9 or 10 degrees. And then we're going to set our table saw to 10 degrees, set this to 1/4 inch, and run our piece. And I keep the blade down as low as possible so we don't cut our fingers off. And there it is. Super simple, super easy to do, very accurate. All right, on with the video. Bye. All right, so we have our router table set up with our little bead bit in there. And we have our piece of wood right here that's 2 inches wide by 7/16 thick. And what I've done right there is just test, make sure I got the bead on the very top and that it matched this little piece of poop here. This has a huge flat on it because it wasn't done like this. We're going to shape something this wide on both sides compared to something this skinny and by itself. It's safer that way. It's easier to control. I can actually put these little outriggers on there that push that in there. All right, I'm going to run this by hand now. I'm going to just do a test. Cutting something like this is much safer than cutting a little skinny piece like that and expecting to shape that and not have that come apart. Okay, you can see that? Perfectly round, looks good, ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is to plane this down to the thickness, and then we're going to rabbet this out here. We're actually going to make a dado, and then we're going to split it down the middle. You can see we've got them pretty damn close. The poplar looks a little burlier right now because this thing's so tattered and it's got a huge flat on it. So the next step will be to plane it down so it'll actually be 5/16. After we get done planing it down, we're going to actually dado out in between these two pieces here. And then the last one we're going to do is rip it to size. So I did this test piece right here. I thought my mic was on. It wasn't on at all. I eat food and I want to take a nap. I did this on the table saw. I set this here to 1/8 of an inch. I measured this with the calipers, and then I measured the depth here, which was 1/8 of an inch. The guy on the motorcycle says 1/8 of an inch was perfect. I just used my square that time, set it to 1/8 of an inch. Set it back here and raise the blade up till it hit it. I think that's what everybody does, right? If you're lucky enough to have Wixie products, like this guy here and this guy here, you can use this to set your blade height also. The only problem with these guys is when you turn them on, you can't see them. This has magnets so you can, sticks to the table saw, but when you turn them on, you can't read them like you can read this guy. That I can read, and I think that's amazing. These, when you turn them on, you still can't read them. You need to get a flashlight or something and light them up. Even with all the lights on, I can't see what the hell it says. If they all lit up like this one, I'd be really happy, but they don't. Maybe they'll fix that one of these days. 1/8 of an inch it was. I didn't feel like putting a dado blade in there, and I really don't want to cut this to size and set it up on edge and rip it that way because it's so damn thin, it's hard to hold on to. It's easier for me to run stuff flat on my table saw, making like 10 different passes, I think it was. You run one, you flip it over, run it again. The first pass I did, I set my saw at 3/16 of an inch, and I made a little pass, and it came out perfect. Little tiny straight sections here are so freaking small. I mean, it's like a 1/16 by 3/64. It's very thin. So I'm going to start in the middle. This is about a little less than 2 inches. So I'm going to set this saw to like 15/16. Start in the middle, and we're going to run it one way, flip it around, run it the other way, and then we'll just move the table saw over like 3/30 seconds every single time, which is a little less than 1/8, which should give us a nice smooth surface here. You got to be careful though. I don't want to push down too hard. Pushing down hard on something this thin, I'm afraid it's going to break. So if you see me grab this scrap piece of Doug fir at the very last, a couple of passes, I'm just doing that to push down so everything is flat when I'm running it through the table saw, and I'm not having my fingers over the little tiny blade, because if it breaks, that would be bad. We'll just do one, and then you'll get the idea. Ready? Here we go. There it is. See how small that is? That is so damn small. Yeah, Squeaker says it's super small. I know it's a million passes when you're running constantly back and forth and doing the same thing over and over. You really got to pay attention to what you're doing. I was always eyeballing where the end of this was, so I didn't stick my finger down where the blade is. The blade is sticking up like right here, right where the center is. It only comes out for about an inch on either side of the center line. I was trying to keep my fingers away, like where these two lines are here, which is my start and stop for making doors. I pre-sanded all these edges here. I'm not going to sand it anymore. This is getting painted white. But yeah, now it's super flimsy. Look at that. I thought I might need this block to help the last pass. It didn't feel like it was going to snap or anything. If you're doing something that's like pine or something like that, it has knots in it, be very careful, wear a face shield, because when you get down to something this thin, those knots will fly out and hit you in the head, take an eyeball out or something like that. And I forgot to show you guys the handheld way. I'll show you how to set that up. I got so into it when I was shaping these things, I forgot to do one by hand on my Bosch router, and I'll show you the setup for it at the end of this. Hopefully that was helpful to somebody. Now you know how to make small little moldings safe and dado them and do whatever else you got to do. I know everybody's going to be asking me, because why don't you use a router table? I could easily set up my router and ran it through that way. It would probably have been fine to set up my router table and done the same thing. I could use a power feed, except for it might be too much pressure and actually crack this as we're running it through. It'd be safer, that's for sure, because you'd be covering your blade. It doesn't take very long. It would take me like a minute or two. The reason I don't use a dado blade is because it takes me like 20 minutes to set this thing up, because I got to pull the brake off since it's a saw stop, put the dado blade on, get the other insert, hook up everything, tighten it all up, make sure it all works, lay it, raise them all. It takes too long. This is just 2 little sticks that I got to do, or 3, and it doesn't take any time whatsoever. So I just use my square rip blade, which works amazing. I use it for a lot of dados and rabbits. It comes out nice and square and beautiful. So I'm going to continue on here. If you have any questions or comments, please do so below. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. All right, everybody, we got them all done. I had to make an extra one because as I was closing the shop door, it's one of these snapped in half. But here it is, and I made that one. Took me about 20 minutes to make this one out of scrap wood. Here's the molding that we made earlier. This molding sits inside of that molding. This sits on the floor, on a wood floor, and this is floor molding, whatever. People come and ask me to build and make weird things for them all the time, and this is no different. So yeah, we got all that done. Took about 5.5 hours to make 60 feet of this and 48 feet of this. Sanded up, ready to go, ready to be installed. So this actually matches pretty close with what we made here. It's the same width. It's got pretty much the same bead. It's the same thickness. So it'll be close. It's just in a closet all by itself. So remember, if you're making small moldings like this, make them twice as big as you need them. Add 1/8 of an inch for the saw curve for your blade, and it'll make your life much easier, much safer. And if you can, start out a little thicker and then plane them down to the thickness you need once you've shaped it. A lot of people can't do that. This is just a weird, strange thing that worked out for me, but that was just an extra step that I did. You don't have to do that. But I would suggest always make them twice as big as you need. Add the saw curve in there, and then shape your parts, and then cut them apart. All right, so what we're gonna do now, everybody, is we're gonna freestyle ourselves some very thin molding. If you have a small board like this and it's 1/4 inch or so, and you wanna put a round over on it, and you don't have yourself a router table with a fence on it, how the hell do you go about putting a round over on that? Because if you're freestyling it, you've got a bearing to deal with, right? And you can't do that because this is on there like so, and the bearing's sticking up. The bearing won't even hit that, so what do? So I'm going to show you what you're going to do right now. It's not so hard. It's pretty easy, actually. Whatever piece you have, however long it is, you're going to need a base. And I have a piece of 3/4 inch here that I use for my base. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be MDF, plywood, a hunk of poplar, whatever. But what you want is a straight edge on that. So make sure it's either rip straight or it's joint straight. You have a nice joint edge or whatever. It just needs to be straight. Besides your piece of wood, whatever this thickness is, what you're going to need now is called a router base. And I just use this. This is 1/4 inch. It's close to this. If this was 1/2 inch, I'd try to find a piece of 1/2 inch MDF or plywood that's roughly the same thickness. And the only thing about this is it has to be wide enough to run your base on. Okay, so it has to be able to fit that base on there right there. You're gonna need a couple spring clamps or clamps of some kind. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take our piece and we're gonna flush it up to the base. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna push the router base. We're gonna flush that up here. So we're making sure this is flush here in the front, and then we're gonna take and we're gonna spring clamp this down here. So now that this piece here, our little hunk of poplar, is completely flush, with the front of that, we're gonna actually use this hunk of wood here to run that bearing on to shape our wood. And that's just that simple. It doesn't matter if it's this wide or this wide. So if it's 2 inches wide and you want to round over both sides here and rip it down on your table saw, you can do it that way. If it's 5.5 inches wide, just make sure it's flush in the front and that your spring clamped down so that doesn't move. And let's just try it, see what happens. I know it's gonna make a mess of the camera. Let's just see if it works. If this wiggles around too much and it's too cupped or bowed or doing weird things, you can just double stick tape that down and push it down into place and hold it there. Got the safety glasses on, and here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start off the board. That router is gonna die. See, look at that. You see that? It's got that round over right on the board. And then flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. We're off the board now, and then we're just gonna come in with the bearing and off we go. Now it's now both sides are rounded over. See how that is? And then there we go. I hope it's not all over the camera. This is just a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, but it works the exact same way. All we have to do is just move our router board, flush that up here. We just have to move this router board up so it's flush here. Basically, we're using this front edge as a straight line. If you ever used a straight line jig for anything, basically what we're doing. And we're just gonna clamp this into place here. So I don't know if I want to shape 1/4 inch plywood, but here, we're gonna give it a shot anyway. All right, here we go, ready? That was gross. And there it is, okay? So you use this as a straight line. Just make sure everything's flush here. You got your router board, which half the time you don't even need because this fit on the router all by itself, but you need something to back it up. It should be the same thickness, regardless if this is a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, 1/4 or an 1/8 of an inch, whatever size the thickness of board is, your router board in the back has to match this thickness so you're not, on an angle. I'm gonna give you another weird tip here right now. Now that we've shaped both sides, we have both sides shaped, we have a board like this. So most people would just take their saw and set it up to like 3/8 of an inch. So you have your piece here and you would be like, okay, I'm gonna set that to 3/8 of an inch and start running your pieces through. And you have your little push stick ready to go and all that. And hopefully it works out well. This cut right here, when it's small like that, is kind of dangerous. Sometimes it has a tendency to get caught by the blade on the way out if you're not all the way on there. And it comes shooting back at you and hits you in the ovaries or the testicles and all those things that you might have or not have, and it hurts you. The better way to do it, I know it's gonna sound weird, but I'm gonna tell you right now, it's to cut it on the outside of the blade.
What?
Outside of the blade with the fence here, just like you're looking at it.
Come on!
And you're like, what the hell? We have a 5 1/4 board. We have our table saw fence. Let's say this is the fence. What we want is 3/8 of an inch over here. So when we go to cut this, we have to, we have our 3/8 for our material that we want to keep, and we have an 1/8 of an inch for the blade right there. So what do? If this is 5 1/4, we have to actually set our fence to a 1/2 inch smaller than that. So 4 3/4. So we have 4 3/4, an 1/8 inch for the blade, 4 7/8, and this piece is 5 1/4.
Really?
That'll leave us 3/8. And we'll rip everything, and as we're ripping it, this piece out here will be on this side of the blade, and it has a tendency to just wander off and not get in the way and not get entrapped. You see what I'm saying? So it'll come out cleaner, and it's easier to do. What happens when you flip it over, we're gonna use the same board, we're gonna cut 3/8 of an inch off of there, and now the board's 4 3/4. What do? We just subtract a 1/2 inch from that, and that'll give us our 3/8 plus that thickness of the blade, and we rip it again, and you'll have two pieces that are 3/8 of an inch. And it's just that simple, and it's safer to cut on the other side of the blade out here than it is on the inside here, even with the push stick, because sometimes these little narrow pieces get trapped. It might sound strange, but actually cutting it to the outside of the blade is safer than entrapping it inside. All right, well, there you go. Now you know how to put it round over on small pieces, just like this guy right here, and then cut them off. You can cut them off in here if you want, set up for 3/8 and just run your push stick through it. Just make sure you cut the little foot down, or the shoe, or whatever you want to call it, of the push stick, so it's not sticking up like this. It needs to be flush. There you go. All right, everybody, I got to get going. I got things to do. Thanks for watching, and on with the program. And stay tuned. We're going to put up all the subscribers I can find on my phone for the last month, and your name will be up in lights shortly. All right. Thanks for watching. See ya. I forgot all about this box. So what's in this box is a Viper chair made by people in Wisconsin, all made in America. I saw the damn thing on somewhere and I was like, oh, I gotta check them out, and I bought one. I stand all day, and to sit down is a pleasure sometimes, and sometimes it's necessary because my old legs hurt. So we're gonna have a little unboxing of the Viper chair, and I'll let you know what I think about it. And hopefully it holds my big ass up, because I'm 6'2", 230 pounds, and I break things all the time. I've gone through 6 or 8 Amazon chairs that I've had in here, and there's a whole pile of them in my office that are all broken because they don't hold my big ass up. We'll see how this one does. It says it holds like 370 pounds, so that should do. And it's got a wide wheelbase with bigger wheels. So we'll see how it is. They might be expensive, but so is buying 8 chairs from Amazon at $90 a pop. So there's that. All right, everybody. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh, damn, I forgot it again. Magic button. Oh, I think I watched this one too many times.
Subscribe now.
Is it on now? It's on. Put the other outfeed table. I'm going to put the other outfeed roller on the. Oh my God! What the hell happened? That was ridiculous. What the fuck's going on with this thing here? Damn it! Come on. Off.